Welcome to the story of Millie Salmon and the Infinite Shop. This is Chapter 6, The Leaving. Having the shop crash sideways into the market was hard. For Millie, Stoney, and Jules, the decisions they have to make now are harder. I'm Ray Dubicki, the author, and I'm looking forward to reading this part of the story. It's time to open the universe up a little wider for Millie and for us. You can join Millie Salmon on Patreon or find more at milliesalmon.com. And you can follow this podcast and other stories on social media at Infinite Shop Limited. Chapter 6, The Leaving. Everywhere there are stories. Sometimes they're songs, sometimes they're a book, sometimes they're wet dirt and body fluids painted with fingers across a rock face. They can be written to make the family laugh its way through a cold and hungry night. They can be pronounced as the law for a city. They can be sung to appease an irritable god. But they're all stories, and they are everywhere. Non-life becomes life when it achieves the ability to pass a physical ticker tape of genetic material to the next generation. Life becomes intelligent life when it can pass a story to the next generation. The shapes and colors of the stories are as varied as the suns and the worlds that beg for daylight. To be honest, the stories are more varied than that, since darkness is a better place for stories to hide. The tellers coax them out of our peripheral vision and draw them from dreams, interrupted by morning, using words at the tip of our tongues. They build and move the things we already know, record and edit them for us to discover again. They do on paper what our minds do when we sleep, arrange our memories to tell our history. That history can be beautiful, it can be bloody, it can be the extended complaint about the line at the drive-thru wrapping around the building since the van in front ordered individual kids' meals for the horde of toddlers screeching out its windows. Regardless where they formed or what sun shines on them, a few similar stories pop up across cultures. Children finding ways to grow up, towering sonnets to love, extended requests for clarified bank statements, tonal narratives to finding gum on the bottom of one's shoe. One story echoes across all the worlds and all the languages. It's about the leaving. In its basic state, the leaving goes like this. There is an entity that is part of a family or a community. That entity leaves for excitement or adventure. We, the listeners and readers, gain knowledge from why the entity left and what kinds of excitement and adventure the entity got itself into. Adolescence is when that story changes from cautionary to calling. Old age comes when it changes from eventful to wistful. One of the most galactically popular versions of the Leaving stories is about the Correlate 2, which roughly translates to lover from above or star whore. With some variation of gender or authority roles, the basic story is thus. A village innocent is taken in marriage by a very powerful local leader. That leader is unimpressed with the innocent, who is then sent away to learn methods to please the very powerful local leader. The innocent hops the first interstellar transport and finds some methods indeed. This story is shared by, at last count, over 100,000 individual worlds who also share a very potent series of antibiotics. Even the hyper-intelligent fungus that exists as a single entity covering the planet Hilago 4 in the Bipec system has a story of the leaving. It has no concept of individuality, and there is nowhere on the planet that is uncovered by the mold. And yet, it tells the story of an older brother that went to college. At Yagala School of the Seventh University, Professor F. F. Purst Sansafal, ZPT, is an expert in the leaving stories. He's a short and brusque man who himself left a very prestigious placement in the applied literature program. After a student asked the difference between an archetype and a trope for the third time, a very heavy book was applied to the student's skull, resulting in 50 sutures. The administration decided Sansafal's title in applied literature should be less literal. Now the chair of theoretical literature, the professor's concept of quantum illiteracy maintains that the leaving story itself inhabits a paradoxical state of non-existence without one other piece of knowledge. The person that left. Did they ever come back? Whenever it was nearby, Stoney could hear the shop. She had lived inside it for so long that to be apart from the pulse and gasp of the machine stretched her hearing. Even through their building, and the technical fact that the persistence engine existed outside of their building, she could hear its small power shifts and low hum. Stoney could do the same with her daughter. Picking Millie's voice out of a crowd was simple, something trained from telling the screams of crying babies apart. Stoney also knew the pace of Millie's steps as they walked, her breathing in a dark movie theater. It was not just sound, but a pace that life had for the past 12 years. Now both of the sounds were surprisingly somewhere else. The suddenness made the world painfully quiet. Stoney stared at the door for a minute, and another. She used every reserve and sparking bristle of focus to keep from ripping that building open and reclaiming Millie. She would then beat Millie with whatever was on hand, coffee, bottle of water, her shoe, but the girl would be reclaimed. It would do no good, it would do no good, it would do no good. The lack of the other sound, the machine sound, told Stoney that the only thing on the other side of that door was the juice stand that was advertised in happy green decal on the glass. This was not a punishment to be administered. This was a problem to be unraveled. Priorities. And with that word, the lists started forming. Where is the danger? What is out of place? How urgent is it? She turned to face the market. By a quick head count, she had 600 off-world people from 3 different sources. The shop that had delivered them was now who knows where. Millie was on it. Her first call was to Dalen Burrell. On Dalabrator, Stoney's first assistant clicked her headset on the first ring. It picked up with a recording of Dalen's voice saying, "Hello, Dr. Salvia. I'm in a meeting, but I'm listening." That it went through was a relief to Stoney. The shop had not fully untethered from Earth. The people in the market would remain blissfully unaware. She would be able to get to the shop and wouldn't need a starship. "I need you in my office. We are tracking an asset fluctuation." Dalen had never heard that phrase before, but knew it meant move. She excused herself from the meeting, ran full speed down the hall, and pass-keyed into the private elevator to Stoney's office suite. Dalen took Stoney off mute. "An interesting day at the market, Director." "You've always been nice to your parents, haven't you, Dalen?" "I will admit I was kind of awful right before qualifying exams, but otherwise I'd like to think so." "Good for you. When we get off this call, have a box of candy sent to your mother." When the doors opened at floor 138, Dalen was already at full speed. Through 2 double doors and into Stoney's dark office. She waved her passkey at the desk and lit up into a display of the city's major markets and lenders' work for the day. Dalen waved her second, orange passkey over the desk. It rearranged to a map of the galaxy, a web connecting stars, and a long display of figures running down one side. It looked pretty much the same as the first display. Tell me where the shop is tethered to Earth. 8 locations. Barber Avenue is one of them. That is very good. Stoney immediately broke into a fast run towards her house. She wouldn't even need an airplane to get to the shop. What else do you see, Dalen? A corner of the map was flickering green. Currently, the shop is flipping between a lot of different places simultaneously. Nowhere too far from your region, but it's moving a lot and with no time at any location. What do you see is happening in the engine? The wide box of text was spewing information. Dalen started waving through it. Nothing different than expected for flipping between places fast. Going back up the list of events, there was a few minutes at an odd location on Earth, and just before that, there was a huge spike in everything. Just a huge nonsense knot of readings. That location on Earth was not just odd. It was right in front of me and Millie, like it was fighting to get to us. Where is Millie now? In the shop. Dalen sucked in her breath and quickly double-checked the display. None of the worlds they're visiting are uniquely dangerous. All of them have acolytes. Relief. Friendly worlds. Good. Put me through to all of them. And one further step out? Dalen drew a circle around the cluster of stars that buzzed green, then pulled the circle larger by half. Good idea. Ha up! The line was open for Stoney's message. Hi, everyone. I'm sorry to take you from your regular days. For the first time in a long while, we need you to actively watching the door to the shop. The persistence engine is not behaving predictably. Contact me with any irregularities. Ha down, Dalen announced. Stoney's voice and image was translated into dozens of formats. Phones and displays buzzed across the long, swirling arm of the galaxy. As soon as it reached them, they started messaging back. Nothing outside, but they could look into the windows and see the shop's confusion. And put me through to the acolyte on pit 14. Ha up! Greetings, Tago. When you get up from hibernation, give me a call. Hopefully the urgency of that last message is past, but I always love hearing from you first thing after your long nap. Ha down. Stoney stopped at a crosswalk. She was a dozen blocks from home. What else did she need? Millie was being looked after as well as possible. The knot was bigger, though. She needed that problem to be worked on. Dalen. There were other people that came through. I can only describe it as groups of people pouring out the door. Start seeing where those people came from. I know one of them is the first standard cult of Maxis the Obnoxious. Do we know anyone there? Maxis? Stoney involuntarily shivered. We will wait on that. Use that as a reference in the data. I will dig in. Thank you, Dalen. Message as you find things, call if it's urgent. They disconnected. Stoney repeated it to herself. Millie is safe. Acolytes are notified. Millie is safe. Dalen is working on the floods of people. Millie is safe. She looked at her phone with hesitation. Then she called Jules. Professor Sansifal identifies one type of conclusion to the leaving. He calls it the never gone. The leaver or hero of the story is never fully gone. They may be out of sight or away or alienated from their home, but they maintain and nurture some attachment. It salves the distance. At the same time, it emphasizes the differences between the places where they split time. A second variant Professor Sansifal has identified is a class of stories he calls the pensive return. After going out, the hero looks to the things around them and remembers all the things left behind. For whatever reason, at whatever distance, they decide to go home. The importance here is that the return is based on an active decision of the hero and not a goofy coincidence or external push. It appeared to the outside that the shop was flitting between known worlds. To very specific friends looking in windows across the galaxy, There were some irregular flashing lights, a bit of buzzing, and the open sign in the window kept flipping back and forth. To Dalen, who was sitting at one of the shop's 4 off-site monitoring terminals on the 138th floor of the Primatat Bank building on Dalapertor, a quadrant of the galaxy was lit up green and flickering. Inside the shop, the mood and the safety of the situation was quite more uncertain. When Millie stepped into the shop, having abandoned her mother at the Sunday farmer's market, she found a place that was completely familiar and quiet. The books were on their shelves and comics in their boxes and hallways twisting away from the entrance. The newspapers, the Sunday Times and the weekend editions from Halloween weekend, were all in their racks and gently ruffled at the opening door, everything in its place, except Grandpa, who was hiding behind the desk. He poked an eyeball up, expecting to see another wave manifest itself and march out the door. "Well, that's a relief," he said at the sight of Millie. "I'm not even supposed to be here." "A punished granddaughter is better than what I saw at that door for the last few minutes." Grandpa stepped around the desk to survey the newspapers and decide where they were. Then he looked at Millie. "Where's your father?" "Mother, I left her at the market." "And came all the way to the shop?" "It came to us." Grandpa nodded. "That was the pounding. It came in sideways. But I've never seen the—" Millie screamed and punched the door so hard that all her bracelets jangled. The door creaked and lights started flashing in the small windows. The newspapers started writing and rewriting themselves. "Millie!" Grandpa gasped. "What happened? What's wrong?" "You all know so much and are telling me nothing about it. You are saying, it's just this, or, oh, that was whatever. Then only thing you tell me is to be afraid," Grandpa finished. "No one says what there is to be so terrified about." She heard all the conversations again, all the smart things Mom and Dad said to each other that they don't hear themselves. And they absolutely didn't hear the parts they leave out, the little snippets that only play in their heads that they don't bother to fill in for the audience. And now those wide chasms of speech were left open and waiting for Millie's fertile imagination to fill. "So everything is terrifying." Grandpa's eyes softened on his granddaughter. Millie heard his sympathy and saw his look through flooding eyes, but that didn't help either. "I am not afraid!" The boiling frustration ran over again. She slammed her hand into the door again, palm first, and followed by her entire weight. The door broke through the frame and opened the other direction. "Well," said Grandpa. The last time the door swung that way was on purpose, as protection when they rescued Jules. That time it had been into an apocalyptic wasteland with lasers. Definitely not this place. Here the opening was silent and black. The shop only illuminated a little way into wherever it was. Then it was simply absent of light any further. Millie looked out. "Is this what everyone is afraid of? Is this the end of the universe?" "I don't know what this is." She put down a toe beyond the door. Past the threshold, there was a floor. Her face went out. The atmosphere smelled of an over-air-conditioned hotel room, antiseptic and cool and forced, but so silent. Even the moving breeze made no real noise. She stepped onto the rectangle of light, hand on the doorknob. She was exposed, in this world, beyond whatever they knew. Am I supposed to be afraid of this too? Grandpa felt the weight of answering correctly sit squarely on every word he said next. "I'm feeling fear about this myself," he slowly told her. She talked over her shoulder, not breaking gaze with the void beyond. I have already left once. I left Mom at the market. I can go further. Yes, you can. Do you know where it will take me? No. Do you know what I'll find? No. Then what do you know? I know that someday you'll take that next step. You have to, Millie, and it will be incredible. But not yet. Do not leave out of fear. Leave in the bright morning, not in late night. Millie turned and looked over her shoulder at her grandfather. I am not full of fear. Everyone around me is. That's right. Your courage is boundless. You are ready for so much more. I can't be the one that releases you. You deserve unlimited horizons, but without that release, you're not leaving. You're running away. She hung her head. The movement of air shook the hairs that fell in front of her face. Wherever this was, she could just walk away. She was past the edge of the diving board, 2 feet on the plane out of town. In that moment, Grandpa saw her jump 1,000 different ways. He heard the bolt catch 1,000 more. She spun and smiled. She waved. She marched. She stomped. She just drifted off. Until she didn't. Until that small hand with the tender red palm and jangling bracelets pulled that large door shut into its proper frame and stood in front of his desk again. I want to see everything, Millie said. You will. You will see so much more than any of us can show you, so much more than we can imagine. She turned back to the door, and it opened properly at her twist. It was their little Barber Avenue entrance off of Hudson Street, the painted brick walls and the spot where the tree roots lifted the sidewalk. Mom framed in the door, Dad with her. Professor Sansiful's third category of the leaving stories is when something makes the protagonist go back. He called it the forced return. Whatever quiet whisper is the last thought that makes the pensive returner come home, they do it on their own. Whatever makes the forced returner come home, all they had to do was follow the threats, pressure, and screaming calls for their return. Jules and Stoney had waited for the shop to deliver their daughter, but it was Grandpa that spoke first. This means that Millie is ready to be knowledgeable. Stoney nodded. Jules said, It doesn't appear that we have a choice. Father looked at son. Benji, are you coming too? Don't call me that, and I don't seem to have a choice in that either. Jules and Stoney came in the shop, and the door closed behind them. Millie and Grandpa held their breaths. No flashing lights, no pounding noise. The shop was functioning normally again. Well then, let's get to the middle of the story. Grandpa flipped around a few keys and found a pretty large one that was black and shiny as the mayor's car. He looked at it for a second, then offered it to Jules. No, I'm having a big enough day just being here. I should have let you take care of this a month ago. You should have done it yourself, but I'm happy to do it now. The key went into the door handle with a twist, and the door opened with something between a click and a shoop. For the second time ever, the entire Salmon family were in the shop together. Grandpa started a well-rehearsed speech, tailored for a new recruit. As you have seen, Quibby, there are places in the universe that are full of very intelligent people. They're not people as you think of Earth humans, but everyone breathes and loves and remembers and decides in whatever way they do those things. If they think of themselves as a person, think of them as a person. The 4 of them stepped past the door and out to the railing of a wide ledge. It was one of a dozen layers of cross-cutting walkways, overlooking a huge garden plaza and fountains and glass pyramids. Each concourse was lined with open doors and goods and wriggled with countless different kinds of people carrying packages and pushing wagons with more people or stuff or kids. "Told you we'd make it to the mall today," Stoney poked. "Just didn't know it would be this one." But Millie was not looking at the shops. She was looking at the glass pyramids in the floor. They were full of darkness, smattered with tiny lights. She thought for a second, then leaned over the railing and looked up at the ceiling of the whole complex. Another 3 layers of walkways was a glass ceiling, more darkness, but this didn't have just scattered little dots. A stripe of brightness ripped across the night. They were stars, and they were so close together to shine like one sun. "We're in space!" The words rode Millie's inhale, a dancing question as much as an excited exclamation. "You're always in space. See, Earth is right down there." Grandpa pointed towards the second pyramid in the floor. "The Terran sun is the dim star in the bottom left corner, right next to the table with the people in green capes." A few faint yellow dots clustered where Grandpa was pointing. She guessed the faintest one in the furthest corner was home. "Now look up, right there, past the store selling things roasting on spits. Since most things look like chicken when they're roasting on spits, we'll just say that's what they're selling and save some gruesome details for another time. In that window, there's a very bright yellow star. That is Talus. The planet Pyrrhion is the 5th of 12 planets in that system. That is where Dalabrator is." There was no question which one Grandpa was pointing towards. It glared like an unanswered kiss. But Millie's eyes were drawn away from the bright star by its huge number of friends. What was a torn strip of bright, new, dawning paper on first glance started to mix and swirl as she looked longer. Smaller blue-white dots and bigger red ones began highlighting thin edges of clouds, each lump and roll stretching billions of miles. Even the distinguishable bands became muddled with so many stars. Millie tried to stare through it, and it only shone brighter. "Is that the middle of the galaxy?" Jules' hands were sculpting the railing into new shapes. But Millie's question was filled with such glorious awe. It was the nicest noise he had heard in weeks, so he forced himself to look up. They lived under an orange city sky on Earth, diminishing further its very faint view of the galaxy. Now everything he shut behind the shop door stared at Jules. "Almost," he said. "Would you like to see an even better view?" "Is it scary?" she begged. Jules looked to Millie to comfort some wide-eyed fear. He found grinning sarcasm. "No worse than parenthood." Jules felt himself pushed, pulled, compelled, and finally dragged back into something he had spent almost 13 years trying to avoid. Professor Sanseval's theory of the leaving stories depends on the outcome. There are those who were never fully gone, those who thoughtfully returned, and those who were forced to return. Sanseval identifies a fourth and final possible outcome: the folks who never came back to where they started. For some individuals and cultures, that is the ultimate tragedy. For others, it's the best possible outcome. The 4 members of the Salmon family walked back into the shop together and headed to Earth. It was still Sunday there, and after some further work in the shop, Sunday meant a family dinner to enjoy. No one was happier about that than Grandpa. This was Millie Salmon and the Infinite Shop, Chapter 6, The Leaving. In the next episode, Millie is going to find the shop left something behind. Thank you for listening. You can find more about Millie at milliesalmon.com or join us on Patreon. Please like, subscribe, and leave a review on whichever podcast app you use. Millie Salmon and the Infinite Shop is a production of Infinite Shop Limited, which you can find on all social media platforms. I'm Ray Dubicki. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to reading some more for you soon.